Hello, my name is Greg, and today we have a comic animator with unique visual style, talking on their stylistic influences, the accessibility of fiction, building an audience, and Star Wars. But now, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Victor. I go by mighty__Victor on most of my social media platforms. I'm an animation director, editor, and animator, and at the moment I'm doing a lot of sort of comedy, little short type things for socials. Yeah.
So everything under the sun, director, editor.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. It's. I think. I don't want to immediately leap into things, but I really like that in animation you can be everything. You don't really. I don't know. I think it's great that you can just kind of get stuck into making a project and you don't need to wait for funding or collaborators necessarily. It's it's very fun collaborating with people, but it's great being a one-man production thing too.
Freedom to do whatever comes to mind.
Yeah.
So we'll start off then with the work you're doing at the moment. So you're making animated shorts, comedy shorts for TikTok, Instagram. The short form comedy. Is that sort of, with your art, has that always been something you've inherently looked for, is to make it comedic, look for fun within that?
Yeah, I think so. I do enjoy a lot of serious work, but I always feel like I can never. I hate the idea of being taken seriously or sort of admitting that I want something taken seriously, so I always lean towards comedy, because I think in some ways there's more challenge to that as well. It's difficult to make things funny. I don't even know if I ever achieve it, but hopefully I do.
Oh, I giggle a lot.
Yeah, so I think comedy has kind of always been what I've looked to do. I have done some more serious stuff, but I don't enjoy that as much. I think it's more fun for me to work on stuff that I find funny. So yeah, that's kind of what I've always leaned into, especially more recently.
And you say the challenge of doing comedy, it can't just be funny for you, it needs to be funny for viewers as well. And so is that the sort of media you also ingest yourself? Do you watch a lot of comedy or read comics and stuff, comedy stuff?
Yeah, I watch a lot of I guess other people's stuff on social media is always good for, not for stealing, hopefully. but it's good to see what other people are finding funny at the moment, what's sort of in the animation comedy zeitgeist, I guess. I suppose there is some, going back to the stealing thing, it can be tricky if you've got an idea and you see someone else has already done it. Then it's a bit like, I don't know, you think about, can I twist it in a way to make it original, or should I just scrap it? So I don't know, it's difficult, isn't it? Sometimes you think maybe you should just not look at anything so that you never feel as if
you keep your own thoughts.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
But then I don't know, I think it's really nice that there's a bit of a community, I guess, of like people making animated shorts online, and they're all very friendly. So it's good to look at what other people are doing too.
So but that idea of keeping things sort of relevant, like one of the ones of yours that's popping in mind is the one of the robot doing the illustration of the guy.
Hey, look, I drew you.
Passable attempt. I have created an image in your likeness also. Behold.
Why did you only draw me with 2 fingers? I've got 4, see? Ow! That wasn't very nice. Yes, yeah.
Tearing his fingers off. Like tackling AI art in a comic way. And that's now been a topic of relevance in the art world for well over a year now. So a lot of people have tackled that, and is that so? Doing that short yourself, you think, how can I do my own spin on this topic?
Well, that didn't start out as being about AI art, really. I think it was mostly just I think the idea of being friends with a sort of like completely emotionless, soulless, like, I don't know what it's supposed to, it's like a sort of like kill drone kind of thing. I just thought that was a funny idea, and that you just do casual activities with it. But then I guess it sort of rolled into that idea of generative art and how I just think the thing of it being so amazingly capable of producing stuff but always having trouble with fingers is very funny. Because a lot of human artists have trouble with hands, so I think that's kind of, I don't know, it's interesting that it carries over to the evil machine art kind of stuff.
I guess there's some sort of vindication there. If as a human you struggle with it, even the robots do as well.
No, you're right, actually. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I think with stuff like that, it's good just to think of. I have seen lots of stuff, sort of AI art parody kind of stuff, and just thinking about what is something that I haven't seen in that, I suppose. And I hadn't seen any about, the machine changing the number of fingers that you've got, so I thought that was a funny route to go on. I did get some comments on that of people saying that the number of fingers was still wrong at some point. It's like, okay,
that's pedantic.
Doesn't matter.
Do you put a lot of thought into, like, are you working on one short at a time, or do you have multiple ideas you run with?
Yeah, well, I have a thing in the notes on my phone of just potential ideas for the future. A lot of them I look back at, and I'll just think like, that's nothing, that's terrible, I'll just scrap that one. But yeah, most of the time they come from just having a very vague idea and then doing a bit of recording. I always try to make them seem like they're improvised, or, well, they are kind of improvised. I just sit down and I think, what would people say in this situation or whatever. I like aiming for that kind of naturalistic delivery and stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's very rarely planned way in advance. I've done quite a few in the Wizard and Apprentice series now that I do, and they're almost always just like, I don't know, quite often I always post on Sundays, and on Friday I'll think, oh I need to do something, like, is there anything relevant that I could do about, or is there... I spent ages trying to think of one for, like, package delivery, that's a modern thing. What would a thing be for that? And, that's... Yeah, I think I prefer to keep it sort of loose and open and just on the fly, rather than planning it way in advance.
Do you think if you do take...
It's a little bit stuck, I guess.
If you try and plan and get meticulous, then you start losing the essence of it.
Maybe. I think it's more like, it might start to feel like obligation of thinking, okay, I've written down that I have to do this one this week, so I have to. Whereas, otherwise you can just say, I'll just do this one. I've got a little bit of a structure in the schedule, I suppose, of like, I usually do a Wizard one every other week, just because people like those, so I think it's nice to keep that up. But then in between, it's just, anything goes.
So I did wonder, like, you've had a fairly big boom in followers, a few like quite viral shorts now. Do you have additional pressure when you're doing stuff now? You think, will people like that, or should I be doing something relevant, or are you just trying to keep it how it was to begin with? Not
really. I think it doesn't feel any different. I don't know. I think I was expecting from the first... I think on the 1st of June I had 764 followers or something like that. And then by the end of that month, it was 10 times that. It was 7,000 or 10,000 or something. I can't exactly remember what. And before that happened, I always thought, when I hit 10,000, I'll feel like I've made it. But you know how it goes. It's like it still just feels the same, really. I'm really glad that so many people are responding to it and enjoying it. But I don't feel too much pressure in terms of nobody's ever demanding that I do one thing or another. Maybe I'd feel different if I was like, oh, it's a new original thing, and all the comments just said, no, we don't. We just want wizard. None of this other stuff. But I think for the most part, people are kind of receptive to
your own ideas.
It's great. It's I suppose I have felt sometimes that like, oh, wizards are the bread and butter. I gotta keep doing those. But I didn't think the first one of those would do that well. So I tried to keep in mind that idea of anything can sort of take off and be the next major thing. So yeah.
So just keep going as you are. Not really any increase in pressure. Stuff.
No.
And and doing comedy shorts, you said you don't like the idea of people wanting people to take you that seriously. Is that also in just your general life as well as your artwork?
Yeah, I suppose so. I try not to be too. I don't know. It's so cliched, but like, oh, the world is so serious already. But it's kind of true. I think it's good to focus on, because calling it the real media feels so wrong, but with like news coverage and people who, debaters and people who cover like drama and whatever, there's so much of that already. I feel like it's important to have stuff that is just for the sake of being funny and doesn't really have, not that's a political stance in itself to say it's not political, obviously, but just to have stuff that is kind of unrelated to anything that's going on. It's not really saying anything besides
have a laugh. Be isolated, a bit of levity. Which I think is just as important as covering those serious topics. I'd never want to suggest that people shouldn't talk about serious things, because they're important, obviously, but I think having fun and laughing is just as important. So I guess maybe that carries over to what I'm like outside of my work as well. I don't know, I've never really thought about that. I think it's a hard question to ask somebody themselves, because oftentimes you have to ask people what you're actually like. Because it's quite hard to be introspective on that level. I was just thinking, because sometimes I see, whether it be quite gothic dark work from people, and you think, I doubt they're that sort of heavy in real life. Or you see
you're right,
like light stuff, and then I think the ones that come to mind are always Miyazaki, it's the meme
Miyazaki
where it's the
and Junji Ito,
Junji Ito. They're the polar opposites. It's like, so that's the one that comes to mind. You just wonder what people are like behind their art, if they replicate
that's
that
interesting,
sort of...
No, I don't think I don't know. I don't know what's up with Miyazaki. He's so miserable.
But he's still going.
No, I think, he is. So he's pretending to retire. I think, I guess I tried to embody that sense of levity and not being too serious about stuff in, outside of my animation as well. Into
your day-to-day. And with sort of your comedy, is there any direct influences that you take from? Do you think even just growing up, did you watch a lot of sketch comedy?
I don't know about sketch comedy. If there's ever any of that I've watched a lot of. But I do like that idea of just characters that exist for a single joke and then they're never heard of again. It's just like they're gone there. That was it. I don't know. I suppose most of the influences I can think of are sort of stylistic, where I really like, I don't know if you know of Masaki Yuasa, who did like anime stuff like Devilman Crybaby recently was a big one that he did.
I'll say I don't.
Recently, that was like 4 years ago or something. And like Ping Pong, the animation and stuff like that. I really like especially with anime, I feel like a lot of it is so static and kind of like a few really well drawn frames with not much happening. But his work is very, I don't know, not crude drawings, but kind of like weird wonky drawings where all the focus is on making the characters feel alive. So I like that.
A little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, I try not to have my drawings be too perfect. In fact, they're not perfect at all. They're usually pretty wonky, but I think that's good to kind of keep the focus on them feeling organic rather than like a static thing that moves a little bit.
Which I suppose is something that's quite a challenge in itself, because you work also a lot of bold color and distinctive shapes, so keeping that organic feel despite the sort of maybe inorganic palette and thing, it's quite vibrant, is an impressive thing where you're watching it and you're like, they are human scenes, really, especially thinking about Tech Wizard.
Yeah, well, I suppose with those, in complete contrast to what I've just said about my own work, with my shorts, they are a little bit more static than what I did when I've been at uni, which a lot of this isn't online, so I'll try to provide some.
I did look for your
material.
I did look for Song of the Tadpole, but I couldn't find it. I think it wasn't on Vimeo.
Well, that's still doing some festivals, so it's
I see.
It's not available, but I can send you a secret link to that. And one of the other films, which is sort of like, I think at uni I focused a lot more on that kind of dynamism and sort of smooth movement or very human movement within my style that is quite angular and therefore inorganic. They're not organic shapes, but they move
organically.
In a kind of organic way, I guess. Yeah.
Which, well, I'm looking forward to seeing them if I can get a link. And so I can jump two ways here. I want to talk about you mentioned they're coming out of uni doing that work there. We'll go down that path about how you sort of got into animation, why this is the pathway that you chose for yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so I think out of school I kind of wanted to do illustration. I hadn't really done any animation before. I'd done bits of stop motion and stuff, but never really any traditional hand-drawn animation. And
was that stop motion stuff like doing classic playing with Lego stop motion stuff?
Yeah, it was, you got me. I was trying to make it sound a little bit more, artiste, but no, I still love Lego, and I really enjoyed doing little stop motion stuff with that. None of that exists anymore, that's all in the ether somewhere, I'm sure. But so I kind of wanted to do illustration, but then it doesn't feel like there's as much of a industry for that, and I'm very interested in film and stuff as well, and the collaborative process. Again, I'm like not immediately. I'm going against what I said at the beginning of this, where I was like, I like doing a one-man thing, but I think it's nice, the idea of being able to collaborate with people in different industries and mediums and stuff, like working with music people or voice actors and things is something you don't really get to do with illustration, and it's, well, speaking of industry, there's more of an animation industry around the world, whereas illustration is kind of confined to mostly freelancing stuff.
Yeah, it's much more singular.
Yeah, so, and I don't know, I suppose if you're animating, you're kind of an illustrator as well, because it's just drawing hundreds of times in a row. So I did a course that was illustration and animation, because I couldn't quite commit to doing one or the other. But then I sort of loved animating and short filmmaking and just being able to have total control over stuff, which is more difficult with capturing stuff in a camera. You can't control. You can try, but it's very difficult to control light and space and actors especially when you're a student. Whereas when you're animating, it's like I can do whatever I want.
You've got that blank canvas, and you're the single controlling factor.
Yeah, and from there, it's just been kind of my main hobby as well, I suppose. It's just been making stuff all the time. And then in recent times, like I said before, since the beginning of June, really, it's been I've been doing a lot more short form stuff, which is a lot of fun. I really like making long things. My grad film was, I think that it was suggested on the course that we make it between 1 and 3 minutes long, but mine ended up 7 minutes and 40 seconds, so I went over a little bit.
Yeah.
But I love doing that. I love making things that are long and complex and have a lot of different techniques going on. I really enjoy doing sort of merging 2D and 3D, which you can see a little bit of in my shorts.
I think the most recent one, but like the one with the knight and the skeleton.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 3D and 2D there.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah.
And is that
I couldn't be bothered to make the princess in 3D, so I just she's just a pair of PNGs.
So you like doing long form stuff? Is that more what you'd like to go on to keep doing, or are you in future?
Yeah, I'm always sort of pitching longer stuff to studios and things. I've always kind of feared. I don't know about feared. I've never liked the idea of spending weeks or months or years making something that's longer, and then when it's finally finished, releasing it and there's no audience to see it because you haven't built one. So I think what I've been doing at the moment is building more of an audience, so that hopefully when I do more long form stuff, it will get more of a reception. Because I think otherwise it can be kind of crushing when it's just like, you know, you spend all of that time making something and then it's out and maybe people talk about it for a little bit, but then it's just kind of gone. And I know a lot of people have issues with sort of like reposting things, and with the online mediascape, it feels a little bit more like things just have one chance, and then if you repost it, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. I don't know why.
You want,
but there is a feeling of that.
Something new every day, every hour, despite the fact that it takes time to actually create things.
Of course, yeah.
But I suppose with the short form, there's a little potential for high reward, maybe a little less risk. Or if something does do well, the next one gets a chance.
Yeah. So I would like to do more long form stuff, but at the moment the short form is doing nicely as well, which is great. It's great to have people say that they like it, and you know, occasional fan art is really, really nice as well. But I think as well there's this potential of short format stuff to evolve into being a bit longer. Like I've had ideas for Wizard and Apprentice that would be more like 2-minute long things, which isn't way longer really. But when you're animating, it takes a while to get something that length. So long format would be fun to go back to, but it's difficult when you're working as well. I suppose that when you're at uni, you just have all of that time to make. You could just focus on the one thing. It's really nice that you can just dedicate your entire life to this one thing that you're doing. But then afterwards, you got other stuff going on. It's a little bit more difficult to commit to something like that. So, I hope to return to longer format stuff soon. Yeah, because I think I do have an audience now. I'm nearly at 20,000, which is a really nice number. So that kind of pushes away that fear of making longer stuff and nobody seeing it.
Because you know there's going to be an audience there.
Yeah.
Question that I have to ask every artist is, because it's stealing a question from. Have you ever seen Jules Holland?
No, I know of it. But
he asks people when they come on and have a talk about piano, like what their first memory of music is, and I love that question. What's your first memory of like engaging with art, whether it be reading, loving a comic book, or first memory of creating something,
I remember well, I'll start with engagement and something that sort of from a young. I don't know if this is the first memory, but I very distinctly remember watching on VHS the first 2 seasons of Ren and Stimpy when I was very young, like probably younger than I should have been watching that, 'cause it's very disturbing and strange. But I think that is, I don't know, I guess it kind of suggested that you can do more deranged stuff with animation. I don't know, it's like, because a lot of the stuff you see on TV as a kid, I don't know what it's like for kids now. I mean, there's a lot of good children's animation at the moment, but I remember a lot of the stuff I saw at the time just thinking, this is okay, I get it. But there's nothing that thrilling in this, whereas Ren and Stimpy was a bit more like, I don't know, it felt more evil and like, which I guess it did turn out to be kind of, we'll get into that, but yeah, that kind of more out there and weird sort of stuff, and then I guess looking into things like that a bit more as I grew up.
I think
stuff I really enjoyed when I was young, but
growing up, I caught the end of Ren and Stimpy, and had things like Ed, Ed and Eddie, and what was it, Cat and Dog? Was it Cat and Dog? Yeah, and all and those which were
there were a lot of things that were just called something and something.
Yeah, and that they were a little more. I think weird is the best way you can describe them.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it's true. They are just kind of like there's something up with them. It doesn't feel like, I don't know.
It doesn't feel like you're like, now they've got Bluey and stuff, and it's not. Everything looks nice and smooth and refined, and that's nice. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But then you had Ren and Stimpy or Red, Ed and Eddie, which looked abstract and a little bit messy at times. And you think, this is energetic, this is fun, and much more interesting, even if sometimes it felt like they didn't have a moral to the story.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I really like things that are like kind of amoral, I suppose. I think that was something they did very well in the 2010s as well, I guess, with stuff like Adventure Time and OKKO. They were really good at doing like, oh, there is no moral to this. Like, quite often the episode would just end and it would be like, oh, we didn't learn anything, or we didn't win. It was just like, that was kind of bad.
It's just an experience,
which I think is really good. It's a great kind of. It feels like believing in your audience as well, like understanding that children are capable of recognizing when characters are wrong or when things have a weird ending, rather than being, I don't know, rather than telling them what's right and wrong, sort of letting them work out if something's up with this or whatever, you know. I think that's really compelling when you see stuff kind of trust the audience like that.
So cartoons are something that you remember engaging with and enjoying. And like, what about your first memory of engaging with actually creating something? Is there anything that pops out for you?
Well, I have a pretty bad memory. I mean, I used to just draw constantly, and I always enjoyed in primary school kind of drawing for people and, you know, people suggesting things to draw and doing that. I guess that kind of like having it be my thing was nice as well. That, you know, I was the drawing one or whatever. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything really specific that I can remember being super proud of, or I don't know. I suppose I didn't really think of it as anything until finishing school and doing uni stuff. At that point, it felt a lot more like, this is my, you know, career choice, my life choice. It's the thing that I'm doing with my time on this earth. Whereas before it was a bit more just like, this is fun, and I enjoy it. But I don't know if anything, you know, I can't think of any like
particular
exciting,
experience.
like life-changing drawing experience when I was younger or anything.
It's just
used to have fun with it.
It's just something that you've done consistently.
Yeah. I guess it's just been natural. Maybe that's the best way to put it, is that it's like I've always been drawn to doing drawing, you know?
And creating and feeling natural. Do you ever have those episodes where you don't know what to create? You're lost for what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been. I mean, I've tried loads of times to do social media stuff in the past, and the issue has always been that I'd have creative block, or maybe even like sort of self-imposed creative block. I always felt like the work that I published had to be of a certain quality, that it had to be, I guess I had to like prove that I was good at making stuff. Whereas now I don't really care as much. Not in a bad way, but like it's more just, I think, this will be a laughter post, this, whatever. I put less thought and less stock into the idea of it needing to be amazing stuff. Maybe as well because I think I've made things that I'm proud of. Maybe I don't need to prove it to myself anymore. I don't know. But that's something that I think I try to encourage in others now as well, is that idea of not being too precious about what you make and what you share. Especially, it's good just to share your work with people, because otherwise it can feel a bit like you're an artist, but if nobody's seeing it, then who is it for? And not to say that you have to have success or a massive following or anything, but I think it's good just to have it be available for people to look at. So maybe that's my cure for sort of creative block now, is I just think, doesn't matter that much, I'll just do whatever. I'll just think of something that I find funny, or I'll go back to something that I've enjoyed doing before, and
And it can sound flippant, but then if it's getting you work and getting you keep creating, then that's all that matters.
I always feel like I sound kind of like I don't care. I'm like, I've sold out, or like, whatever, favorite success, who cares? But no, I think it is more just like I try not to focus on that side of it too much, and try more to just keep the attention on the making side of it, and having fun for me first and foremost. But then also, you gotta do a bit of crowd pleasing sometimes.
Have you had any projects where that element of fun has just sort of dissipated, and that's why you've left it behind, or are you quite good at keeping on track and getting things finished?
Dastardly question. I don't know. Maybe it'd be too painful to think of things that I've abandoned. No, I think I try never to completely close the door on anything. There's lots of stuff that I've worked on that hasn't been made public, or hasn't sort of left the idea stage. But I never say this is done forever, I'm never coming back to this. I think even stuff that I'm not as interested in anymore, I still think in the future it might be fun to return to, as I don't know. I think as well, something that maybe other people find difficult as well is the idea of making stuff that's kind of accessible. There's a lot of things that I've worked on in the past that never quite got finished, that were very, not lore heavy, I don't know what you'd call it, but they're kind of like, you need to be invested in it to want to watch it. And I think other people do that as well sometimes, of having a really complex story with really, and maybe they are really interesting and complex characters, but it's really hard to get people on board with stuff like that. Because
it's asking someone to invest in it, start a passion, basically.
Yeah. Or even if it's just a casual one, it's that idea of, this is a new thing, and maybe if it's your first output, it's almost like people, not in a malicious way, but it's you need to build trust with an audience, kind of, to be like, you know what I make, you know that you like my stuff. And then I think it's good to start introducing more complex, original stuff that's less... The kind of stuff I try to make at the moment is like... When I say accessible, I mean... with Wizard and Apprentice again, everyone knows what a wizard is. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's like...
and you don't need to
really
see...
easy to...
You don't need to see any of the other ones to enjoy the one you see either.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah,
you can just hop on
all,
and see one.
Like, they could all be a first installment. They're just... I try to make it really easy to pick up and just go... Not like, oh, I've seen these characters before, but like, I recognize these roles.
Yes.
And I understand the
archetype
setting. Yeah. And the twist is easy to pick up on as well, that it's like, it's always a modern thing that they're dealing with in their own medieval way. So I think, I don't know, maybe that balance is hard to strike. I think I struck lucky with that kind of by accident. And then it's done well for me since. But that idea of not doing... making it easy for people to get into, not having too much super complex world building and backstory and stuff, because you can introduce that further down the line when people are already invested. You can trick them into being invested and then be like, haha, I got you. Now here's the lore dump, you know?
I think you can relate that. I think the easiest thing to relate that to then is like Star Wars, the first film. You know what a knight is. You know, a farm. It doesn't matter. It's a moisture farm. It's a farm boy. It's a knight. It's an empire. You know, these sort of like regimes. Cool. We understand that stuff. And
people complain about that sometimes as well. That idea of like, it's quite straightforward, and you know all of the elements of it already. You've seen the story before, but it's being told in a new way. But that's great, really, if you can do that. And people are always saying about James Cameron's Avatar, going, oh, you know,
it's Dances with Wolves, you know.
Yeah, exactly, which it is, but it's, you know, it's the most successful like film ever. I think it is still, since he re-released it like 8 times. And I don't love that film, but it's a great example of how you can get people invested in it and looking at it just by having it be easy to get into. When you compare that to something like, I really like the Dune books and the Dune films, but they're really like, oh, there's so much.
They're quite dense.
As soon as you start, as soon as you start, and it's like, the houses of the Landsraad have been at war with one another and it's like, oh man, this is too many, and everything has its own name and stuff. It's very inaccessible.
It's just a series of nouns and names. I'm like, I don't know what any of these are. I don't know what it is. Yeah. And then like it'll be, can I relate this to something I already know? Like, oh, this character is basically this character from something else. Yeah. It's like, but I know that, so I can follow it. But that's
exactly. That's I think that's kind of what you should try to do, is sort of invite people in. And maybe some people take issue with the idea of like, or you know, maybe you think, well, if I keep at it and, you know, I can build an audience that way. I'm sure you can. But if you want people to see stuff, I think it's nice to make it accessible and easy to get into for people. And then I think what you were saying about Star Wars is a great example, because I'm trying to think of what one of the earlier titles of it that George Lucas came up with was like The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Wills, Chapter 1, The Star Wars. And it's like, that's too, especially for 77. Yeah, if people saw that, they'd be like, what is that? That's nothing. This is too, I don't understand. Whereas if it's Star Wars, you're like, I've heard of those. I've heard of Stars and Wars. You know, I'm fond of one of those things and the other one's interesting. So I think making it so that it's not too difficult for people to jump on board with is really good. And I've always been much more of a fan of episodic structures versus sort of long narratives. I much prefer series that are like And maybe this carries over from sort of pre-streaming stuff too, because before, you know, the prevalence of the internet and stuff, if you missed episodes, that might have just been it, especially if it was like not a very popular thing. But I like the idea that, oh well, if you missed this episode, it's no big deal really, you know, you get what's going on with this. I'm never as much of a fan of streaming things that feel like one long narrative chopped into 8 pieces, because I think the trouble with that as well is that you can't point out a specific episode and say that was my favorite one of the, like, people, I don't know if they do anymore, but like, sorry, yeah, go.
That just makes them less memorable. Like, I mean, Friends is the example because of the title format, where it's the one where this happens or that happens.
Exactly, that's a great way of doing it. But I think
just thinking about, like,
compare that to
Smiling Friends or something now. Yeah, you have like, the one where they go on holiday to Brazil is the episode people love, and it's like, and you can think about them, and they each have, you know, memorable things that happen without it just being lost
it's easy
in this.
To point out which one you mean, even if you can't remember the title, it's easy to say, the Snowman one. Whereas with, like, I don't know if it's still popular anymore, but when Stranger Things came out at first and people loved that, I always thought it's like you can only enjoy the series as a whole. It's very difficult to say, oh, I love the one where this happened, because it feels more like it happens at a point in the story rather than in a specific episode. And I always really thought that with anime too. I only really like anime that are kind of individual stories tied together in a series. I don't really like stuff that much when it's like, 50 episodes of one story arc, or maybe a few story arcs, but it's difficult to point out specific episodes. So I think I cannot remember for the life of me what led us down to this. I like episodes.
I think I was talking about, like, archetypes making things accessible. But like the one that we're living in an age where you watch programs, and a lot of time you'll say nothing happened that episode. And it's like, okay, there may be some story beats or some plot points, but there's no events or things that happen. And I think maybe a little less so with House of the Dragon, if you've watched that, but Game of Thrones was one of the worst ones for that. Whereas it was just, I've watched 8 episodes, and I remember the first one and the last one, and nothing in between.
Because I don't know, I think maybe with a lot of, I don't know, I haven't seen many of the Marvel films, but I always think they feel kind of like they're just built to set up the next thing in the saga of it, I guess. And it always feels a bit like, I don't know, wouldn't you prefer it to be... I understand why people like connected universes and that idea of, like, oh, this character shows up in this thing, and it's, you know, it's nice to see. It's like they're little friends, you know, they're mates with each other and they hang out. But I'm much more of a fan of standalone storytelling. I think that's, I don't know, because then you can kind of return to, and go back to the episodes thing. I think when it's an episodic format, you could think, I just want to watch this one episode from the series, rather than committing to rewatching the entire thing to get back into it for like 20 minutes. You can just say, oh, I just want to watch this one. So yeah, I guess that would be a piece of advice if you're struggling with finding an audience as well, is making stuff that's more accessible, easy to jump on board just for one thing. Because it's hard as well with social media to tell how many people are coming back for them, or if it's new people every time. So maybe it's finding that balance as well. You know, you gotta have stuff that pleases the long time fans, and also make it easy for
new people to jump in. And right now, you say Song of Tadpole still doing a festival run.
Yes.
how was that? What was your role involved in that one? Is that all you, or is that one where you were involved with a team of people?
Oh no, that was all me. It was, so I animated all of it. I did some of the voices in it. That one was probably more collaborative than a lot of my other work, because I had other people involved in it. Not in the visual side of it, but I had people doing voices, and I had a really great composer on board for that, who won an award for his contribution to it, which is really nice. But yeah, that was kind of entirely a passion project. And when I talk about stuff that I've done that's more serious, that's kind of what I'm referring to, that film, which is more, it's still funny, but it touches on themes of like grief and growing up and stuff, but then kind of through a comedy lens still. It's still not, I wouldn't call it like a serious film, but it has more serious elements than I usually work with. So to me it feels like, oh, this one's a big deal, it's so serious. But yeah.
Serious themes, but still humorous.
Yeah.
I think that's often the best way to tackle serious themes.
You don't want to have it be too, again, I keep going back to investment, but something else I often say about, if you want to do serious stuff in storytelling, I feel like it's way more effective if the audience feels like they're friends with the character. If you do, there's some web series I've seen where it's like the second episode will be the tragic backstory of the character, and it's like, that's too early, I think. if you do that so soon, it's like, why should I care? Because I don't know who this person is.
No.
If you focus on the fun side of things and have more fun with that character, and it feels like, well, I guess you could compare it to, like, if you meet someone, the second time you ever meet that person in your life, they start trauma dumping. It's like, oh, I don't like this is too much. But once you get to know somebody, then it becomes interesting to find out what what's happened in their life, because you've had fun with them. So I think that's oh, okay, I remember what we were talking about. I keep getting off track. We were talking about serious stuff through comedy and serious stuff. So I think that's the good approach to that, is making it fun for the audience, making them feel like they're part of that character's enjoyable life, and then delving into the more serious stuff if you want to.
I think that's a really good sort of, I don't know if it's a metaphor, but saying that if it was to somebody you met for the first time, that's a great way of thinking it that I've never thought about it before. You can meet someone, it's like, oh, hi, at a party next time. I don't want to hear your whole life story. I still don't know you. That's a really good way of thinking about it.
It's tricky, that kind of stuff. But I think, that definitely applies to fiction too. Some people love the tragic backstory and that's all they're in for, but I think, if you hold out on that a little bit, you always head towards it, and then it's enticing.
And I think that's a hard thing. A lot of artists, or artists who have interest in narrative, they've probably spent a lot of their time, even whether it be as adolescent or thinking about their own characters, and they want to share that. But again, without an audience, that's to begin with, that's quite a lot to ask of people. Yeah,
and it can be really crushing if you spend that long developing something and you're in love with your own, well, I don't know if that's the right way to say it. You know what I mean? If
you have passion.
you're really into this thing you've made and you want to share it with people. It can be very hard when you don't get much of a response, because it's fresh to people. I think you see that with some student films as well, where it's like, when they're like, oh, this is a chapter out of this saga that I'm making. It's kind of like, unless you're doing the beginning of it, you're probably not going to get much of a response, because people don't know what it is yet.
Well, that's something that they might have had 5-6 years of developing in their own heads, and spending a lot of time with. Yeah, that 2 minutes film you've made is brand new.
Yeah, and it's important. No, that's a really good point as well, because people spend that long thinking about their own thing. You forget that other people haven't spent any time thinking about it at all, because they haven't, they're not you. It's tricky, that whole thing of like, you need to make it easy for people. You need to remember that they haven't thought about it as long as you have, and they don't know the characters like you. I don't know. It's so tricky, all that kind of thing, I think.
It almost branches into psychology in that aspect, where you have a story and it's how you get, read it in your own mind. But how is a general audience going to pick up on that or read it the same way that you do? And you see in some things that things fall flat on their face, because it turns out nobody sees it the same way that the person who made it does. But it's an interesting crossover where you've really got to think about the psyche of a general population.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? There's no easy way of going about that. I think the only reason my recent stuff has had an impact or a kind of good response is because ultimately the characters are quite shallow. There's not much depth to them. I haven't thought them through that far. But the benefit of that is the audience is discovering them as I am, I suppose. There's even been instances where I haven't actually implemented this, but I'm planning to at some point, that I've had comments saying like, how old is the wizard, or suggesting things about him. And then I think it's really fun, the idea of kind of rolling that into it, making it canon. No, but having that kind of audience participation. Whereas if you've developed something for so long and you're so attached to what you've made, you don't want to change anything about it. You don't want to kind of you can get fixed on it being a certain way, and it becomes quite inflexible, and that can be off-putting for the audience. Sometimes I think if it feels so rigid and like they can't have any impact on it by saying, oh, we don't really, don't like this new direction. But if you've planned it out 10 years in advance, then maybe you're like, oh, but the whole thing pivots on this. So
you're inflexible.
I don't know. I don't want to discourage people from making their own stories or like complicated things or anything. Not that anyone's going to listen to what I have to say, but like,
I hope some people do.
No, I don't mean listen. I mean, my advice. What do I know? But like, yeah, it's. I think it is important to try to make it easy on people and maybe take some audience feedback too. Yeah.
Again, my mind's obviously on Star Wars today, because that's got me again thinking like, Han Solo's got a Corellian freighter in the first film. Now, all the fan stuff, the comic books that aren't written by George, he's now Corellian. Corellia is a thing. But it's built naturally over a period of years, as much as George Lucas did have his ideas. And when the fans and a community involved in building that's how you get more engagement, or can do.
That's a great example again. I mean, as well, like the thing, when he says, this baby made the Kessel run in 14 parsecs, and it's like the idea of that being kind of a mistake line, like it's making it sound like a parsec is a measurement of time, but then they wrote like they made that like you found a shortcut or whatever. It's like that's good. I think that you can have stuff be sort of vague or like not that thought through.
It's
and
malleable.
If people respond well to it, you can come back to it and you can go, no, Star Wars is a great example, because it's like every single background character in it has a story and a life and everything that has been made since it came out. But that wasn't like, they didn't originally, that's all been since, because people responded so amazingly well to the first installment. It's like, even the guy who runs past holding an ice cream maker is like, oh, he's a hero of the rebellion, It's like, that's fascinating, that kind of approach. So I
Ice
think
Cream
that
John.
is, yeah. I think it's called Wilrow Hood. I know I shouldn't know that. It's embarrassing. Delete that bit, but no.
Don't worry. I'm surprised I don't know the most. I know most of the names. So. Bloody Ponda Baba and everybody in the canteen.
Ponda Baba's the walrus man, right?
Yeah.
With the orange jacket, he gets his arm cut off. I do like he's got cool design. Yeah. But no, I think that's a great point you've made about not being too fixed, like sort of showing a lot of stuff and being like, well, what do you guys think this is? And, sort of having that, because it's really fun having audience involvement too. It's great having people respond to it and contribute is really nice. So yeah,
good stuff.
That's something I definitely encourage.
Good. I think it might be a good place to stop there if we'll just sum up with, because we've ended up going down the route of talking about developing worlds or like developing audiences, which is nice. And that's, would I be right saying that's sort of a big bit of your advice to other budding artists or animators? Keep your work accessible.
Take away anything. Yes, accessibility is great. It doesn't have to be the entire thing you focus on or what you do forever. It doesn't always have to be accessible. But getting people on board is the key to success, really. I think most people who have made it doing, a webcomic or a web series or whatever, it started out being really easy to get into, and maybe it's gotten more complicated as it's gone on, but I think that's the best place to start, is making it very easy for people to get into. And
the rest will come naturally.
Yeah, hopefully. And also, I guess, not putting all your eggs in one basket. I think that's something I've tried with my animated short stuff, is being a little bit scattershot and seeing what does well at that exact moment, because I don't know, culture is always shifting, isn't it? It's like you never know what's gonna be popular at that exact moment. Yeah, I think I'm not really into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, but it does feel as if there's been more of a kind of medieval fantasy uptick in culture recently. So I think, maybe that's part of why one of my things happened to do well. So yeah, I think keep it open. Don't be too fixated on one particular avenue. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. What
I'll do is this will be on Spotify and on YouTube, but on YouTube in the description we'll put in your links. You're at Mighty Victor, or is it Mighty _ Victor?
It's 2 underscores.
Double underscore?
I think 1 underscore was taken. I can't remember.
Who's the other Mighty Victor?
I don't know.
And I'll also put a link to the trailer for Song of Tadpole, which is on Vimeo, I think. Or it might be on YouTube. It's on one of them. But I'm looking forward to, after the festival run, will it be made available on streaming?
I'll have to make it available at some point.
I'm looking forward to seeing
that's another nice thing too, is having a bit more of an audience now. I can build a little bit of hype and say,
you've done a thing.
It's good. Well, it's like award-winning, so that's nice. And I hope people will enjoy it when it finally comes out. But in the meantime, I post weekly on Sundays, at least for the near future. I might change that at some point. And I always try to make it different, so if you have a look and you think, "God, this all sucks," then maybe next week something will come out and you'll be good.
Yeah. So check out the socials. Every Sunday there's something funny. And thank you for listening or watching, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Don't know why I'm waving.